Hello and welcome. I am Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am grateful for all of you who are joining us here today. Today we are talking with Gary Merrow, and before we get into that, let us just briefly thank our sponsors, our patron members, ABS Quality Evaluations and Onuma System, as well as our organizational members, as you can see here. And we do want to especially thank ABS Quality Evaluations for sponsoring this month of this program, ALN Thursday at 4. Without these sponsorships, this sort of programming would not be possible. So thank you very much. And with that, I would just say, feel free to check out other podcasts and videos on our website, assetleadership.net. This session will also be a podcast and a video coming soon. And so you can find that there and share it with colleagues or friends or anyone who needs to see something like this. And yeah, lastly, just if you're out there and have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. So post those or send them to me in the chat or the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar. And with that, I'll pass it off to Mike Bordenero, Director of Communications of the Asset Leadership Network.
Thank you, Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology at the Asset Leadership Network. And I'd also like to say that ABS Group, the parent of ABS Quality Evaluations, is now providing ISO 55000 consulting. And you might want to check them out. They are providing full services that are separated. Anyway.
Mike, do you want me to read a little bit about ABS while we're talking about them?
No, I just wanted to make that note.
Okay.
Thanks. And very happy to be talking again with Gary Merrow. Gary is a star at the Asset Leadership Network. He has completed ISO 55001 certification at the Atlanta Airline Terminal Company, focused on infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, to make sure things keep running all the time, and recertification that expanded the assets that were included. Gary will be telling us about that, and some innovative collaborations he's doing across the pond with Gatwick Airport in the UK. We like to start off with a personal question, and so let's just start really specific. What brought you to where you're at today, Gary? That's not a typical office.
No, today we're actually holding our first quarterly business review, and we're off-site, and we're holding it at with one of our partners, Jacobs Engineering, who is our primary facility service provider, and we decided to hold it off-site at the Braves affiliate, the Gwinnett Stripers. And so we're going to be, as soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to go into a QBR, and then about 7 o'clock, we'll watch the first pitch. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Excellent. So your QBRs are quite extensive.
Well, this one actually I love because it's closer to my house. I have quite a long commute. So holding one over here versus driving up to Atlanta Braves is so much nicer, but it's just a change in pace. Everything's kind of getting back to the new normal. And being able to hold this event offsite with very valuable vendor partners and a little bit of fellowship, and it's kind of one of the things where we want to say it's almost overdue. So it's going to be a good evening.
Yes. So let me ask another question. When did you first realize? I know you were in the Air Force, and that's basically you were asset management. But when did you realize what you were doing was asset management?
Well, it's interesting. In the Air Force, again, I started as a wrench turner, working on HVAC systems and the like, fire alarm systems and the like. And as I kind of grew up, I started teaching at Georgia Tech in their graduate program in integrated facilities management, more of a cradle to cradle approach. And as I was doing some research, getting ready for one of my classes, I stumbled into ISO 55001, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the bedrock of what we're doing. So I was very big into leadership and energy design for O&M, and just started looking at this part of it going, this is more of what we do. Had not really even had studied a lot on past 55. So started doing a lot of deep dive and research, and it became kind of a core portion of my program that ran through the whole program on the cradle to cradle approach. And then when I went to the Hartsfield Airport, luckily they had been talking about it, about getting the certification. Had done a gap analysis in 2015 and 16, and I came on in 2017 and was lucky enough to be one of the executive champions. And 5 years later, here we are.
So I believe you've been through a second certification.
Yeah, so we started, our first certification was actually our central utility plants. And we laid out a 5-year growth plan. We just couldn't eat the elephant all at once. We really couldn't figure it out internally with given our resources and the scope of our day-to-day. So we started with the central utility plants, and then we moved into the electrical infrastructure, as you mentioned, and our vertical and horizontal circulation, our escalators, elevators, and moving sidewalks. So we've done a certification. We recertified last year, and this year we're actually going to expand our certification. When we do our surveillance audit, we'll also expand our certification as ABS comes in here, and we're going to be picking up our baggage handling system and our HVAC control system this year. So a little bit of a challenge as we're starting to watch our business return rather rapidly.
Well, glad to hear that. So you and I have been talking about return on investment. We're trying to do something on an international level that allows us to have understanding of benefits and values so that they can launch an initiative like what you have done with some kind of confidence that they'll get a benefit and a value. At this point, just, anecdotally, what are some of the benefits that you've received?
Well, it's interesting. To me, it's as we're building a common language, our biggest benefit has been as we've created a little process called a risk priority number. And it's really helped us look at our assets and really start coming up with strategies on renewal and strategies on how do you get around your risk? Is it process driven, or is it you buy your way out of your risk? We've really been focused on that, and it's really helped us. And as we did the ROI, we keep driving down to, so what is a good ROI? How do you calculate it? And is it more return on investment from a money standpoint, or is it a return on investment from a non-loss revenue, non-loss profit, and non-loss reputation? So if I have if I lose a concourse from a power perspective and I can't get it back quick enough, what revenue streams are we losing? That's a lot bigger and harder number to calculate. So we're trying to, we're working through that to get a number that the finance people will buy, because, at the end of the day, the finance people are controlling those dollars. So we want to make sure we can keep the certifications going and keep, going down that right road. So we just really have to show how we're able to recover the facility or the systems, the assets a lot quicker when we do have issues with them, and using those to when we go off to buy new. And the last piece we're doing right now that's been a challenge is we're working on kind of a scorecard with it to show the value add of our maintenance programs and how we're taking care of the assets. So we're really starting to look in the total cost of ownership methodology you and I spoke about, that was presented at the first conference I got to go to with you guys in
2018 or 19, I believe.
Yeah.
18.
Seems like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you really blew everyone away with that first one, and then bringing Kofi Smith to the next one was really wonderful. And so the scorecard, can you give us a little insight on how that's working? Since you're at a baseball stadium, it's appropriate that you're talking scorecards.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing, so one of the requirements of the study is doing that internal audit. And we faced an interesting challenge this year. The people that had been doing our internal audit, they quit doing them. And so as we're looking at how do we roll this out, and from a cost perspective, I'm not sure if it was a brainstorm or more of a quick rain shower, but I said, why don't we go to another company that's ISO certified, and let's see if we can do some knowledge share and do an internal audit with them. We're trying to keep it US based, not a whole lot going on in the US on that. So our partner Jacobs, they introduced us to the folks over at Gatwick Airport, and we talked to them in Heathrow, and we ended up this year, we're working with Gatwick, and we've actually started the internal audit process with them. And they will be auditing us, and we will be auditing them, and both of us getting prepared for our surveillance and certification audits in September. So
wow, that's really great.
Well, the interesting thing that I'm finding right now is, and I'll be remiss if I don't mention John Sheppard. He's the asset manager over there in Gatwick, but and we're having to juggle our start times because of them being behind us or ahead of us on time. But it's been looking at how we view our processes and how they view their process. They ate the whole elephant, and we're trying to figure out how do they do that, and why couldn't we? And then how do we bite off more next year to kind of complete our journey a little bit quicker? So the knowledge share, this is what I've always, I love about this so far is seeing what they do versus what we do. And at the end of the day, the asset is still the asset, right? So it's just finding the commonalities on how they view stuff.
Excellent. So are you able to do this all via web, or are there some trips involved?
Well, right now there's no trips involved. We're going to do everything virtually. We did our internal audit last year virtually with our consultants, and we actually did our surveillance audit with ABS. We did everything virtually. This year, we still hope to have ABS on site when we do our next surveillance and our certification process. But right now with Gatwick, we're doing everything through Teams, and I have some scheduling meetings and things that I do every week, and I've invited them, so they're online watching our meetings, and I guess taking ideas away from us, and then we're invited to some of their meetings, so we're seeing how they operate, and we'll take away from them. So it's just been really enriching from that knowledge share standpoint, especially as we look at how they do their business processes versus how we ordered our business processes.
Well, we're starting to plan our 2021 fall event, which will be in November. And if both airports are willing, we'd love to see how things worked out for you and have a program. But get through it first.
Yeah.
I suspect that Gatwick has ABS doing that.
Gatwick is using a different company for their certifications.
Actually, that could be insightful too, where you tell them what ABS said and they tell you what theirs. I know Lloyd's of London does it. There's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So we are the Asset Leadership Network, and we have been very impressed with the Atlanta Airline Terminal Company leadership, Kofi Smith and yourself, and now with Kofi retired, who has stepped into that, and how has the new person responded to the whole ISO 55001 certification process?
Well, that's a good question. Our new president is David Ham, and he was a long 30+ year career with Delta in the corporate real estate. So he was basically responsible for all of Delta's airport properties around the world. And he was also our chairperson for close to 15 years. And he had actually was the one who had brought Kofi on board. And he actually, during my interview process, was the chair that selected me into the role. He had retired from Delta and was living on a lake, and got a phone call and saying, hey, Kofi's leaving. Would you be interested in coming back? So he came out of retirement, and he's back on board, and he is he's like Kofi in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways he's a lot more high speed and a lot more business driven with what we're doing right now. So he's receptive to the ISO concept, but I've had to go back in and resell it. So given an overview of where we've been since he's been gone. He actually authorized the first start of it, but having to go back in and sell him on this is what we're doing. And now he's him and a few of the other board members are challenging. So what's the true ROI? What's this costing us? And Gary, what are the benefits from it? So it's good because I think every now and again when you're into a process in the weeds, you need to pull up and really take a hard look at what you're doing. And if you can't justify what you're doing, then maybe it's not bringing that value add. But we're able to show the value add. So he's okay with it, but we're working. He's pushing me to do the ROI. And so we're going to work on some presentations. And about that time, Mike, you call me up and say, hey, would you like to?
Yeah, just for our audience, the Asset Leadership Network is working with the Australian Asset Management Council to establish a program of value and benefits, including ROI from asset management. And what we want to be doing is having case study presentations, a template format so that information about value and benefits are in the same place for all the case studies. And it won't be something we can add up and say, if you do this, you'll get 15% return. If you do this, you get 20. But there'll be a section that everyone can look at and say, oh, these people found benefits with 1, 2, 3. These other people found benefits with 4, 5, and 6, different ways. But I can start an asset management program and have confidence that I will get some benefits. So Gary, when you had to sell it, what were some of the key things that you were able to say these are the benefits?
Well, we're able to show a lot of our recovery efforts. Even though you're ISO 55001 certified, you're constantly learning about your systems, and you constantly unearth new risk, which has been interesting. So we were able to show how fast we were able to recover from smaller power bumps within the facility, or we've also showed a couple of times how we brought the plant back online after a contractor working somewhere else had taken it down. So being able to bring systems back up a lot faster was one of the biggest sells. And then the last part, Atlanta's going through a very large capital program spend where somewhere between the neighborhood of 6 to 10 billion a year that's forecasted over the next 6 to 10 billion over the next 15 years. And as we're doing that, by having our robust asset management program in place, we're able to show that, hey, we need to replace the whole HVAC system for 700 million, but until we get that larger project going, here's what we have to spend now to keep the building operating. Here's your primary risk area. So we're giving leadership the facts and letting them make that fiduciary decision. So, we'll execute. It's their money I'm spending. So I just want to say, here's your risk. Here's all the facts. You make the decision and we'll execute whichever way you want us to go. So that's been one of the biggest sell points.
Excellent. So did you find that there were any benefits having gone through the process to be ISO 55001 certified when COVID hit and you had to dramatically shift operations?
Yeah, that's another interesting. That was a tough one for us because we had actually started taking a look at, we were growing by leaps and bounds. We were on track to have almost 130 million people through in FY20 pre-COVID. And so when COVID did hit, I'd already said, hey, what happens if we have a downturn in the economy and we slow down? So what does that look like if we slow down? Did not plan on shutdown, which is basically what we had to do. And so what we actually shut down whole concourses. We put up walls and shut down half of concourses. And as we did those, knowing what we had out in the field, as running our central plants as tight as we did from energy, we were able to show the reduction in operations and the operation savings to both the Department of Aviation and to our airline board members. As we cut, literally $40 to $60 million out of the budget from a standpoint of utilities, ratcheting down on parts and slowing down on some construction projects. So it was a very tough time, but having having that risk priority mindset already, it allowed us to very quickly assess what was out there, where we could turn it off, where we had functional backup to it, and then also how do we start to recover it, which is now becoming the bigger challenge as it's coming back quicker. Is, hey, now everything you turned off, you got to turn it back on, and unfortunately we can't snap back like a rubber band. So we're going through some comeback challenges right now.
Wow. And how do you calculate the return on investment to be able to respond more efficiently and effectively to shutting down like you did? That's a hard one.
Yeah, a lot of what we did was just, shutting off some of the assets and then cycling them, making sure that, you had the right robust programs in place. We've been challenged, and then some of the equipment that wants to run, when you start shutting it off and bringing it back on, you run into new challenges as well. So it's, again, the largest ROI there was showing we knew what was out there, and we were able to say, this is where you're going to get your bang for your buck shutting it down. So that was a very big issue, a big way to justify it. And then the other way is just being able to lay out a recovery plan for the leadership on their decisions.
Okay, that's good. Then I'm curious as to how your information management has been improved or advanced through having to share the ISO 55000 information.
Well, as you're doing that, and you're working on your strategic asset management plan, your SAMP, you have to go through some of the tools. We utilize the PESTLE and the SWOT tools pretty in depth, and it's taking that mindset and both from a COVID shutdown, we were pulling questions ahead of the actual shutdown because of some of the meetings that started up in January and February with the CDC and with our large international concourse and flights. So we were a little bit ahead of it because we quickly identify, the external threats, and then how are we going to react to it. So that helped us there. And then now when we had to go to our vendors and say, hey, we really need to scale back. We don't have any international flights. I don't need to have 66 people standing around doing nothing in the international terminal as far as baggage recheck. So we were able to sit back and pull that information down, then go back, because we're kind of in a disciplined process of working through our flow charts on our processes and identifying things. We're just taking that over, and we're able to go back through each of our processes, identify better what our needs were. And then now we've also started going back and saying, okay, so what are the triggers for us to start bringing people back or to start turning assets back on? So we had kind of as passengers come back, at this point, we turn on these assets. At this point, we open up this concourse. At this point, we bring back more people. So it's the good part about ISO 55001 is that you really get disciplined to looking ahead, quit looking so much in the rear view, but looking more forward and coming up with plans on that.
Again, how can you, calculate the return on investment, but you just described a huge departmental improvement. So it's good to know that you have human resources related to your assets. That was the kind of information management question I asked or was wondering about. So you had that aligned ahead of time?
We are, yes, not ahead of time. As it happened, it was more of reacting, but now, we reacted the way we should have according to what happened. Some of it was, flat out driven. We don't have any planes moving. We don't need this concourse, but which concourse do you want to shut down? And so there's a lot of operational decisions that the airlines
not the Delta concourse.
Well, Delta did actually. So B concourse, which is basically one of the busiest airports in the world by its in and of itself pre-COVID, because of the sheer number of flights that transition there. They looked at that, and the demand was gone so much that we kind of virtually shut it down. We shut down our C North, and Delta had to consolidate the airplanes off of it, but we were able to say, while you're doing that, here's the assets that we're going to take down right now. Here's the savings we're going to get from those assets. Here's some of the heavier maintenance that we're going to do right now, so we can make sure that when it does come back, we're not going to have problems. And it just shifted our focus on the minute everything shut down. All right, we know we're coming back. It's just when. So let's plan for the when, and again, set those trigger set points of when things are going to come back on, and then also start taking a look at what capital plans, what projects renewal projects can we do now, what major overhauls can we do now to try to get everything lined up. So again, it's being disciplined into the process. You're a little bit more comfortable when you have to hold those meetings.
Gotcha. That was really good, Gary. Thank you for that detailed answer. We've got a question that relates back to bringing on additional asset, into your certification. Do you develop a new asset management plan for each type or group, or do you incorporate them into your existing asset management plan? How do you address that when you bring in new assets?
So the way we do it, so let's just take our baggage handling system this year as we're bringing on board. Our primary vendor for that is Daifuku ELS. And so I tell a lot of people when they ask me about how the cost of it, I'm like, we're already doing a lot of this. So ELS already has a lot of these plans in place as far as the assets and what's a priority and how do they fix them and what are critical assets to have on the shelf. It's then just bringing them into the meetings and getting them to learn our talk. And then because they actually attain a separate asset registry from us, it's one of my few vendors that I let do that. We had them go back into their system and identify the risk priority numbers, and they built that up. So it's more of talking with them, bringing them in, letting them understand what we're looking for, build them into the specific business processes that deal with the management of the assets. Our business processes 4, 5, and 6. And then when we come in for the certification audit, they're then engaged in it. So we'll take ABS, we'll walk them through the system. Last year we did it virtually with GoPros. We walked through some of our vertical transportation areas and showed them what we did. But we'll walk them down and walk them through how we maintain the systems. And then the auditors, of course, will ask the questions to validate that you do what you say you're going to do. So, and that's to me, the best part about it is you force me to say how I'm going to maintain something, and then I got to make sure that everybody understands it, because everybody at that point that maintains that system can be asked, and they all need to have the same answer. So drives consistency.
Another good commercial for the value of ISO 55001 certification. Thank you. And by the appearance of Nick, I think we're drawing to an end here.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Gary, for your time and be respectful of that. I know you said you had an obligation coming soon. So I just, before we got off here, wanted to thank our sponsors again, our patron members, ABS Quality Evaluations and Onuma System, as well as these organizational members. And again, with special thanks to ABS Quality Evaluations, because they are sponsoring this month of this program here. So it is super important that we have their support so that we can bring these programs to all of you. And then a brief plug for next Thursday at 4 with Tom Smith. That will be June 10th at 4 p.m. Eastern here again. So hopefully we see you all there. And thank you, Gary, for your time. And if you want to have any closing words, you and Mike can do that.
Well,
ahead,
yeah, Mike, again, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'd like to give just two quick shout outs. One to Gatwick with Anthony Yates, their head of engineering, and John Sheppard, who's our asset manager. And then my team of Tracy Atkinson and Jennifer Powers, who are my champions internally. So I appreciate it. And let me know if I can be of service again.
Well, you're always good at thanking your whole team. I really like that about you. And look forward to November, because I'd love to hear Gatwick say, Atlanta does this horrible. And then you could say Gatwick isn't any good. You know, I hope you're both willing to do that and have fun in the presentation, talking about how you helped each other.
And I know they will. They're very much into sharing it. It is a great airport. People I've dealt with over there are just top notch, and just wait till you see some of the stuff they do. And I will be appropriate in what I can and getting better, because I think that's the only way we get better, is to share with other people the processes. So thanks again, Mike, for having me on.
Sure. And what team are you rooting for?
Oh, the Gwinnett Stripers. The Gwinnett Stripers are playing I think the Jumbo Shrimps. So I love 4A and 3A ball,
Well, go Stripers, I wanted to say, and thanks again, Gary.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good day.
For now. Thanks to everybody who attended.